The Iron Warriors by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video and channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. So, real quick, I know I didn't release a video yesterday. I had a buddy from the Marine Corps come visit me, and it had been a while since I'd seen him, and we ended up just drinking a little bit, So, I had meant to post a post on it on like the community tab, but a couple beers in, I was early gone. It was a great time though, great time. I know some of the people in here are military members or prior military members. Especially when you get out, just make sure that you guys keep in contact, man, because just that feeling of seeing someone who you're very close with, you haven't seen them in a long time, it really feels good. So, and also I'm just going to be trying out some new intros just because I haven't been able to find a steady upload time, so it's really coming out whenever I'm able to just get them out. So, Iron Warriors, the counterparts really to the Imperial Fist, both very good at defense. I've heard at many moments in the comments that the Iron Warriors were supposed to be better, but that the Emperor just favored the Imperial Fist more, and then that's what kind of also led the Iron Warriors to actually become traitorous. Now, I don't know if that's the exact reason, but from what I do remember, that's kind of what I saw in the comments. We also know that there was that big trap where Rogel Dorn had to send some of his guys pretty much into a trap, the Iron Cage, where they were just slaughtered by a bunch of Iron Warriors. And just recently with some of the other videos, we've seen that it seems weird because they're considered a traitor, and in some of the previous videos you also see that the Iron Warriors don't like chaos, or having a chaos attached to them, or like foreign them in some different manner, because they see it as weak. So they kind of struck me as kind of like the Alpha Legion, in the sense that they're kind of trying to do their own thing, but they're still considered a traitor, right? And I'm just excited to see like more information about them, see what they're all about. And let's go ahead and get started. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that notification bell right there. And we get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes uploading twice a day. Now working on them whenever I can, and releasing them at some point the next day. That way, there's at least one fresh video at some point in the day. I really got to work on the ending of the intro though. So, without further ado though, let's go ahead and see what the Iron Warriors are all about.
Colonel Frisch was outclassed. He knew this from the outset, but he had to try. For the God Emperor himself, he would not yield this world uncontested. He had word of the enemy he faced. A cold and haughty Inquisitor had given him the best advice he could before going to the front to engage the horrors, renegade Astartes traitors. The Inquisitor had explained how they had lived since the first ages of the Imperium, since the Great Crusade even. Yet now were creatures lower than vermin, for they had turned their backs on the master of mankind.
I just want to say I have not seen this weapon at all. I've not seen anything like this. Looks like essentially just a saw, right? Okay.
Emperor himself, blessed be his name. Frisch had wondered why the Inquisitor had suddenly become so forthcoming with it all. Then the bitter realization hit him. They were all going to die. This is the only reason the witch hunter had revealed so much. He did not think any of them would live. The Inquisitor explained how these Marines, these fallen Astartes, were experts in siege warfare. So Frisch decided to throw out a wild card. He knew he could not sit in bunkers and behind crenellations that would only actually put his adversary at the advantage. He knew this. So he marched out to meet them on the fields of Caspasian in full battle order. What then ensued was a brief game of cat and mouse, as the enemy, these Iron Warriors, dipped in and out of view on the horizon, always where he least expected them to be. Time and again he redeployed his army and marched headlong towards the traitors, but each time they melted away. Battle never seemed
Melted away. That's kind of seeming like a guerrilla warfare tactics, right? Kind of like hit them as hard as you can for a little bit and then go away. I mean, technically during the I think the first moments I've heard about this is during the Revolutionary War in the U.S. It's kind of what the U.S. was doing. I mean, well, not technically the U.S. at that time, but I'm gonna just say colonists, that they were doing a lot of this to the British, from what I do remember. And I think that was the very first time, at least me personally, I've ever seen or heard about people actually employing these type of tactics. And I mean, we've seen them. I believe it was also in Vietnam, right? And it was always typically, from what I saw, from a force that was supposed to be smaller, maybe not as well technology advanced, and they're kind of just trying to work out any method that is best suited for them, trying to, I guess, turn their negatives into an advantage, if that makes sense.
Like it was coming. Perhaps these traitors were in fear of his army. Perhaps they had decided against a battle. Perhaps the Inquisitor, as unlikely as it seemed, had over-egged the cake. But then it began. When it started, the Colonel realized his error instantly, but it was too late. He had marched straight into a trap. A horrifying trap. As his regiments of men stood and marched forward, columns of armor behind them prepared to counterattack at any time, he realized that they now stood completely in the open, nothing as far as the eye could see. They were sitting ducks. He had so concentrated on the enemy below, he had forgotten the enemy above. Orbital barrages started to slam into his army and tore it to pieces. Huge swathes of his men, his armor, his artillery, simply melted under huge blasts from the Iron Warrior fleet above. As he tried to wheel his men about and flee, the trap was sprung properly. The orbital bombardment ceased and was instantly replaced by land-based heavy ordnance. Then they began to appear, out of foxholes covered by sod, amongst them, right in the middle of his guard, but never were the pinpoint-accurate barrages struck. His men scattered as the Iron Warriors just appeared amongst them, slaughtering them all with heavy firepower, vicious charges, and utter carnage when they struck. His armor attempted to move forward, only to begin to fall into traps. Sturdy enough to support troops, but not armor. As such, they fell in, causing pandemonium behind, while the armor attempted to not only extricate itself from the traps, but from the cluster that they had become. Fast attack craft swept overhead and carpet-bombed their columns. Death from all sides was unleashed at the guardsmen, as the circle of their forces shrunk again and again. Nothing could stop the Iron Warriors. Nothing.
Okay, so this really reminded me, and correcting me if my history is wrong. In the Marine Corps, you do learn a lot of the history, just what happened in general. And now, this reminded me of, if I'm wrong, this is going to sound so bad. I think it was Peleliu, right? The Peleliu Island, where they were bombarding the shit out of it. And then it was supposed to be like a jungle, but then it just ended up being like scorched earth, in a sense. And that as soon as that happened, that's to thin out any, I mean, maybe not in that case, because right here, it was more to like take care of the tanks and all that. And then with Peleliu, it's just that there were so many caves and they didn't know where the Japanese during World War II were at. So they were trying to do this, try to thin out numbers, and then send the guys in, try to take out the remnants who are still alive, which is kind of what reminded me of here. Seems like, especially in this type of scenario, since he said that they were in flat land, very effective against them. And then considering that, obviously you got Space Marines. I don't know how many are in this engagement, but I would assume that they probably wouldn't need too much to be able to take out the remnants of those who are left.
Iron. We are iron. Iron within, iron without. Tell them ruin has come to their world. Death, despair, and red war. Tell them their hopes and pride have come to nothing. Tell them their empty whispers fall upon deaf ears. Their gods are dead. Human logic has killed them. Tell them the angels of death have come. Tell them that nothing can save them now. The Primarch Perturabo. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces and factions of the Warhammer 40k universe. Today, again, we look under the bed. We throw open the cupboard, and look inside at one of the darkest elements of the Warhammer setting. For today, we are to explore the very basics of one of the most terrifying forces in the grim darkness of the future, the Iron Warriors. Their tale is a cruel one, but everything we have come to know and love about the Warhammer setting, the grimdark. So, let us begin.
Before he does, dude, the Iron Warriors, the name itself, I don't know what it is. It kind of gives you chills. It gives me chills just hearing the name. I mean, it's obviously like those type of things. Like, I mean, hell, it even happens today, right? Like, we have high schools, or you got, hell, even in the military, right? For 3-7, called the Blade, right? But just there's certain names when, especially when you try to name it something that's supposed to strike fear, I guess, into your opponent, the enemy, whatever. The Iron Warriors, man, that name itself sounds really terrifying.
At the dawn of the Imperium, the Emperor arose and forged 20 armies, 20 different types of warrior, but all of a common strain, these genetically engineered super soldiers. The Iron Warriors were the 4th Legion of the Emperor's own Angels of Death, his Space Marines, his Legiones Astartes. Each was taken from the genetic template of a demigod-like being known as a Primarch. They were to be his generals and his warriors without peer, the very heroes who would forge the eternal Imperium of Man. And they would know neither fear nor defeat.
Real quick, I've been seeing this a lot, and I'm assuming this will also be enhancement, maybe special type of armor. So is this what they mean by further enhancing what you already have as far as with the gene seed? And then do they, at this point, if they have these connected, can they not come out of the armor anymore because everything is connected, or can it be disconnected? Because I've just been seeing this a whole lot. Especially, I think the first time I saw it is when I saw a horse with it. And I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it as of right now.
Each was imbued with abilities, both of the mind and body and soul, that far outstripped those of mortal man. But his Primarchs were swept away from him, and hidden across the galaxy as babes by the dark powers of corruption, the great gods of chaos. Thus did the Emperor launch his great crusade. He unleashed his armies of Astartes across the galaxy, forever expanding out from the heart of the Imperium, the cradle of humanity, Earth, which is now called Terra, which is terra firma, not to be scared, just so we know. For the very basics of their origins, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, originally created as the 4th Legion, the Legion was founded atop the wreckage of a recidivist fortress on the Terran Oro Plateau of Sek Amrek. The warlike gun tribes in the surrounding areas made up the first of the Legion's Marines. The early 4th Legion proved itself in the Unification Wars, making its domain one of the most stalwart bastions of the Emperor. The Legion's gene seed showed above-average adaptability and a below-average resistance rate to bionics. This allowed the Legion to be one of the largest and earliest deployed alongside the 1st Legion and 5th Legion. The Legion continued to distinguish itself in the conquest of the Sol system during the early days of the Great Crusade, winning honours in many battles, most notably in the Mer Yasht campaign on Venus, where the 4th Legion was commanded by the Emperor himself to defeat the deadly Lithogolem armies of the War Witches. In light of their earlier successes, the Legion was given first access to new equipment being delivered from Mars. The Legion led the 8th Expeditionary Fleet, which distinguished itself in many campaigns. However, the Legion did not adapt their tactics to the new realities of the expanding crusade, and was called unimaginative by other Space Marine legions, and by Horus himself. Horus, however, was impressed by their stubbornness, and would use the Legion to fight inglorious but vital campaigns of attrition. They soon became known as the Workhorse Legion, relied upon for their tenacity and following orders to the letter. It was during this time that the Legion began to spread itself out, garrisoning many worlds and fighting many smaller campaigns across the expanding Imperium. End quote. The Fatherless Sons. Thus it was that the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, began to be respected across the Imperium as dependable and no-nonsense warriors who would perform any task without complaint. Without complaint. This did not go unnoticed by the auxiliary forces of the Crusade, The human forces left to hold or continue longer battles where Astartes were not really required. The slow and inglorious tasks of domination and conquest. The Iron Warriors would never ignore a plea for assistance and would always stay until the job was done, the deed performed. At that time, the Imperium at large held them in high regard, but this sentiment was not truly shared by those who mattered most to an Astartes, to a Space Marine. It was all down to the Emperor, Horus, and his brethren Primarchs. That is what mattered to them. Alas, to all, the fourth did not. They did not matter.
Okay, so now I'm really starting to see it then. They're doing a lot of these great things and they're very highly respected, but the people, I mean, I don't think they're trying to necessarily impress them, but, you know, if someone's doing this great, you know, a good, like, to put it simply, hey, good job, you know, good stuff. The people that they would want to notice aren't really noticing it, or if they do notice it, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, you know. And then I could definitely see why these guys are going to probably turn traitorous. Then again, they did say that Horus was also kind of talk shit about them, essentially, from what I believe I heard him say. But that he was impressed by their stubbornness, right? So it's going to be very interesting as far as how they make that transition. Because, I mean, at this point, it's just going to seem like, hey, they didn't really appreciate us and what we're doing and we're capable of doing. So let's go do our thing, right?
The fact that their Primarch was not found left them open to abuse, open to being used as pawns to absorb pain and losses in dark and dingy backwater worlds where there was no glory to be gained, no honour to be accrued. Thus did the legions with Primarchs refuse many a thankless task, and the Emperor and Horus in his turn then filled any gaps with the Iron Warriors. They would not complain. They would not rebel. They would do as they were told. They would fight and die for the Emperor and the Imperium, no matter that no one looked on, no matter that their efforts would never be feted, never be lauded. They just got the job done, and after the orders were dispatched, they were swiftly forgotten. Resentment was slow to ferment, but the seeds were all there, planted in the rich land of abuse and neglect, watered with heavy casualties, fed with the nutrients of others heralded before, during, and after them. Never were the Fourth to be the center stage.
So really treating them as cannon fodder and not really giving two shits of whether or not they survive or not. So even though they said that, yeah, they're going to get the job done and they're not going to complain about it, doesn't matter how long, or because I feel like that's only something that you can keep up to a certain point. Eventually those losses, the people that you're losing, are going to be start weighing down on your mind.
It ate them alive. To quote, one of the Legion's most tragic episodes would be in 842 of Millennium 30, during the liberation of the forged world of Enkaladion. The stubborn 4th Legion used their typical tactics of heavy artillery and armoured spearheads, and suffered staggering losses in a protected siege. Nearly 29,000 legionaries died over the year-long campaign, virtually annihilating the 8th Expeditionary Fleet. Quickly recognized as experts in the art of siege warfare, the Iron Warriors were regularly called upon to exercise their skills in cracking open enemy defences. But this had an unfortunate effect on the character of their legion. By their nature, sieges are the most grinding and demoralizing type of warfare, long periods of tedium and unspectacular labour, broken by episodes of merciless close-quarters brutality. The Iron Warriors saw the storming of the breach as an escape from the tedium, and developed into ferocious close-quarters fighters. They even came to prefer for enemy strongholds not to surrender, thus joining the slaughter of everyone within once a fortress was taken. It became the Legion's curse, one of many, that these episodes of brutality eclipsed their superb affinity for the application of logic and mathematics to military problems in the eyes of their fellow Space Marines and the Imperium as a whole. Given their expertise at constructing and manning fortresses, the Legion also found itself constantly diminishing in active crusading size, as units were detached from it to act as garrison troops watching over worlds in the process of compliance. The most famous of these garrisons was that of the Iron Keep of Delgas II, where a single 10-man squad of Iron Warriors washed over a disgruntled population of 130 million. Even Space Marines need rest, however. But the Crusades gave them none. A particularly brutal battle of the Great Crusade for the Iron Warriors was the thankless Shaktrada Deeps campaign against the Hrad, which resulted in heavy casualties on a strategically far-off and worthless system. End quote. So, they acted in a way that was a silent plea, a great cry. They became the Corpse Grinders, throwing themselves fully into the role of martyrs to attempt anything bar rebellion that would gain the notice of the gods who led the crusade. They went into their battles with a fervour only comparable to that of modern-day Krieg. They died by the thousands. Unheard of in Legiones Astartes, they died. But they also became hard and cold, as I will discuss later, and their constant abuse twisted them. As no one cared for them, they cared for no one. Hence it was that they began to use their allies, the human and abhuman auxiliary forces, as cannon fodder, just as the Emperor and Horus had used them. They learned from their betters well, using mass assaults of auxilia to simply discern the weak points of fortresses, herding them across minefields, having them stand to be annihilated by defensive hardpoints and towers, just to see their firepower.
Okay, so just real quick, this is very similar. I mean, not similar in the sense that, in any case, so the story is my squad leader, one of the last squad leaders I ever had before we actually ended up coming back from deployment, but in any case, this also happened when we were in Syria. The squad leader just was an ass. Any good that we did, or anything that we did that made our squad look good, was all the credit was given to the squad leader, even though he didn't really have anything to do with how we were doing things. He was just kind of chilling and doing his own thing, right? And then after a while, when we did mess up, all of a sudden we're pieces of shit bags that deserve more PT so that we can understand why we're wrong and all that stuff. So anytime we did anything good, credit gets given to him. Anything negative, it was always on our fault, and that he had nothing to do with it, right? That he supposedly taught us everything, even though it was mainly me and the other team leader who were actually doing that. Because, I mean, you know what? Just to put it nicely, we actually care about our guys. Because, you know, you want to leave at least, in principle, you want to leave a good impression in the way that they're going to treat the next generation of guys coming in, right? The guys are going to be their junior Marines. Now, because of a lot of this happening, we still taught the junior guys that were with us what they needed to know and all that, and really kept things really relaxed. I mean, because at that point, in my opinion, there's no need to just be an asshole to be an asshole, because I feel like a lot of seniors do that, even though they haven't really done shit either. So, in any case, we started not necessarily doing anything, or like we started doing the very bare minimum. Like if we're gonna get the bare minimum amount of credit, or like, I mean that makes it sound bad, but it's just like, if you're gonna treat us like shit, then we're gonna do the very bare minimum, right? And so really sticking up for your guys, I guess, or like really knowing your guys. Like I'm talking like I knew these people's families, I knew these people what their hobbies were. I knew what they were good at, I knew what they were bad at. So I would never purposely put them in a situation, especially depending on the situation, in a spot where they wouldn't be able to perform, right? That would be something more, if we had some time to get a little bit of training, I would have them do that. But essentially, look out for your guys, don't be an asshole to them, and don't ignore them, especially when there is credit that is given. Make sure that you let them know, hey, this is a squad thing. Everybody has their own place to make the squad look good, or the squad to be able to perform good. Otherwise, your guys are going to start to have a lot of resentment towards you. At least, that's in my opinion. That's kind of a tangent, but I felt like that kind of resonated somewhat with this scenario. Obviously not turning traitorous, though.
Were done ostensibly to lead to victory, but the costs were catastrophic. The standard troops of the Imperium began to call them the Corpse Grinders, and even began to mutiny when given orders seconding them to Iron Warriors' expeditionary fleets. But the hardest blow of all was about to fall. The control room was silent. None even breathed. The shock was total. The gathered Astarte simply looked at the words on the screen, dumbfounded. Finally, when there was no way to misconstrue the order, when it had sunk in, all present, almost as one, sagged. It was Lieutenant Orn Toramini that broke the silence. I can't believe it. After all this time, all we have done, I cannot believe it. That's enough. Is it? Is it really, though? We've fought so hard. We've done everything asked of us. Things others would not dirty themselves doing. All this time we have held on, waiting. Waiting for the day we are no longer the fatherless sons. Waiting for that time when someone sees us, speaks for us, upholds our honour for a change. All these years we've waited, quietly, patiently, for someone to stick up for us, to lead us. But this is what we get. You have not failed, but you have not realized your potential. These are his words of welcome to his very sons. His first words. Our Primarch. Our own blood. He orders decimation on us. Have we not bled enough? Oh, the irony that we waited with bated breath for this. The ancient practice of decimation. We have to take every 10th man of us and have the other 9 club them into mulch to kill them. This is a joke. Decimation was always reserved for the cowardly, the craven, the mutineer. How do we deserve this? What cruel trick is this? The commander stood quickly and...
Wait, what? Okay, I mean, obviously, I feel like he's going to explain later on why. I just cannot think of a good reason as to why they would do that. I mean, yes, do they have some resentment now considering everything happening? Yes, but they're still kind of doing the job, at least from what I'm seeing. And... fuck, man. That's just a big FU to his own guys.
Snapped. A word in private, Lieutenant Toramini. The commander strode to his office at the back of the wider command and control, his subordinate following sluggishly, with little animation as his wide eyes stared at the ground as he trudged. The doors closed behind the two, and the officer then turned on his heel and delivered a thunderous backhand blow across the face of his junior. To his credit, the lieutenant did not lose his footing entirely, but was driven to stumble backwards, only being stopped by the bulkhead. His head rang as his superior stalked the 5 paces between them, and pushed his face against that of his victim. Not quite nose to nose, but there was no escaping his cold, dispassionate glare. His rage was written all over his sneering face as he practically whispered his retort. I've always liked you, Orn. Don't get me wrong. Always. We've fought side by side. We've bled together. So know that I genuinely like you. Okay? The younger Marine gulped and slowly nodded. But when he tried to open his mouth, his commander officer shook his head slowly. I've now finished. I've always thought you formidable, Marine. In any other legion you'd make the cut. You might even excel. But here... You see, secretly I've been hoping, with every drop, every siege, every firefight, I've secretly been hoping you would not come out of it, that you would die with honor. Because we both know your little secret. I've tolerated it up to this point, as I say, hoping it would never become an issue by your inconvenient and timely demise. But you've just done the unspeakable. In front of the men, you have revealed your little secret, and it won't stand now. They know. Because you are very good at what you do. You have survived up until now. But you just blew it. Because you make all the pretense of fitting in, of being compliant. But we both know it's a show. You are iron on the outside. So you've gotten away with it. But now all know what I have known from the start. Your little explosion has ruined the illusion, because we both know you are not and never will be iron. Iron within. We will take this decimation as we have everything else, without complaint, as Astartes. You cannot, because you are not iron within. So I'm going to do for you the only courtesy I can, brother. I'm going to make damn certain that yours is the hand that picks out a black ball. Yours is the name on a list. The winning...
Okay, holy shit, man. So you always hear these moments about people having absolute 100% loyalty. I mean, take for the Marine Corps, for example. But in the Marine Corps, people are still going to complain, but they'll do it. They'll do it for the most part. But now these guys take it to a whole nother level, like on steroids type levels, man. Like I'm talking, this guy is willing to literally, kill every 10th person by having 9 beat the shit out of him, like, until death, right? And then obviously this other guy, the more junior guy, is saying like he can't believe that this is happening. He believes that they shouldn't do this, but he's saying we're gonna do this, and he really calls them that he's not iron on the inside. Like he's complaining. Like I just realized this guy was complaining about it, right? And these guys don't do that. I mean, obviously this was something that I would complain about, right? Like I would say like, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why did this issue for decimation get ordered? But not this guy. He's just, we're gonna do it just because that's the order, and we're not gonna complain about it. Iron on the outside, not iron on the inside. Dude, that little line just gave me chills. Holy shit.
When it is time, it will be by my hand that a cudgel strikes your head. It will be by my hand that the next blows will crack and then shatter your skull. And it will be by my hand that the cudgel is raised and lowered again and again until there is nothing left of your head but a mulch, as you say. Because you cannot face what is coming, what this order means. So I save you from days, months, decades, or even centuries of pain. So I will be the one to kill you.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Now, I didn't really know what to kind of expect of, or how I would feel towards the Iron Warriors, just because I feel like every traitorous legion, obviously, you know, you hear traitor and you just think very malicious thoughts like, oh, these guys just did this thing because they're trying to see more power. They're trying to do this or that, personal gain, and all that. But seeing the Iron Warriors, man, just the way every single chapter is written, or legion, it's just it's so well done. Like it's really, I've always seen this specifically in anime, because I'm into anime, that if you're able to get someone to, say for example, you had a fight between a villain and a good guy, for example, right? If you like the good guy and all that, and you really are behind them to be able to win that fight, but you're also behind the bad guy just because of his story, and then just if you're really rooting for both sides, that's when you know it's a great story. And it's just something that's like really hitting me right now with the Iron Warriors, because even though with the Alpha Legion, right, saw that they were supposed to be traitors, but it seems like they were kind of doing their own thing, and it kind of seemed like they were, to them, seemed like they had a legitimate reason to them. Now with the Iron Warriors, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, but now that I've seen this, it just seems like they kind of went unappreciated for so long, and that they're losing so many guys, and that even in this moment, right, this last little moment where he says that he's gonna kill the junior guy, and essentially figures out he's not technically iron or a true mindset of an Iron Warrior, just because he not really, I mean, well, yeah, he did question him, but he's also complaining about it, right? Which is just something that you don't do in there. And my roommate just got home. Also, there was a lot of noise a little while ago. Hopefully that doesn't make it into the vid. But you see just a lot of how tough that mindset is to be able to do that decimation process and just kind of do it with, or already think like, shit, I'm gonna have to do it, but not really ever second guessing it, right? Not ever asking the question as to why is this happening, you know? And dude, these are like, as of right now, amongst Space Marines, obviously being some of the toughest, if not the toughest things out there, I feel like the Iron Warriors at this point, from what I do know about them, are like machismo, tough guys amongst tough guys. And as far as their mentality goes, honestly, I'm excited to not only see the rest of the Iron Warriors, but also just get into more about the Traitor Legions, because I want to see what their motive was, and I feel like that could either make or break a story on a chapter or a legion or on anything, right? Like if it's just because they want to be a bad guy just to be a bad guy, that gets very dull very quickly. But if they have something like this, like the Iron Warriors at least had a reason, right? And it seemed like a pretty damn good reason to me, at least. I mean, I could be completely wrong. They could have done some horrible things when they did become traitors, but yeah, man, I'm really excited to just see kind of what more of these legions are going to be about. Iron Warriors, though, so far from the Traitor Legions, I mean, I know I've only done two, the Alpha Legion and the Iron Warriors, but the Alpha Legion just kind of threw me off with the mysteriousness, mysticism, and all that. Just a lot of mystery, very secretive. But now the Iron Warriors, at least, I feel like I'm really behind them as far as like being like a fave traitor chapter or legion. Ugh, I keep getting those mixed. But yeah, that's gonna go ahead and do it for this video though. Don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it. It really helps me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming next, check the description down below. You're gonna see a list of about 5 videos from top to bottom. It's gonna be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video.